welcome back to Gatekeepers. On today, October the 26th, this topic is all about horror and how to run horror games. And I will be leading the discussion with several questions because I legitimately do not know how to run horror games. And I will be asking my panel some questions. Now, before we get started, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you really like the content, consider hitting the like button. And without further ado, this is Gatekeepers. So let me start by first stating that I understand how horror is constructed from a literary standpoint. You start things off by establishing what is normal for the protagonists. Once done, you slowly introduced abnormalities to the protagonists in ways to build mystery, unease, tension. Once the abnormality has been discovered, however, you explain it away, lessening the unease, allowing it for a sense of normality to return. This, however, is a red herring or a trap, as the feelings of respite, is truly a carefully laid trap designed to ease the tensions and lead the protagonists deeper into the trap. Once the protagonists recognize that the trap, the walls will begin closing in on them, and escape should seem fairly impossible. That is until the real threat is revealed. At this point is the climax, the most dramatic part of the horror or suspense. And everything should be on the line by this point. The protagonist's fight or flight response should take over here. Once the threat is dealt with, the tension should ease and an actual return to normal, or the new normalcy, should take place. It is during the resolution that we, the viewers, get to know if the threat is truly gone. Now, with that exposition out of the way, I understand horror, as I said, in a literary sense. So allow me, to explain the reasons why I'm running this as a Teach Me How episode. And for this is because for the life of me, I cannot figure out how to run horror at a table in a game setting. I don't understand mechanically or thematically what I should be doing and when I should be doing it to drive that sense of horror or dread or fear or terror. So with all that said, let me bring in our panel. Tonight we are joined by Connell the Cigar GM and Shadow of Shadow and Sun.
Howdy, folk.
So, are you guys ready to teach me how to terrorize?
Sure.
Absolutely. It's pretty easy, actually.
Fantastic. Oh, okay. Well, I do have quite a few questions on this because, again, I know nothing. Anyhow, hey, good evening, Malachi. Thanks for joining. So, let's start off by establishing what kind of horror or suspense games you have both run. Tell me the setting or theme that you used, as well as a typical encounter or monster for that setting or theme. Shadow, I'm going to start with you.
Well, the first horror game I ran was a game called Chill. I ran that for about 3 years. It was a game by Pace Setter back in the 80s, before there was like Palladium's version. I'm pretty sure Call of Cthulhu existed out at the time, but it was a investigation type game. You were members of this organization called SAVE. It was basically a bunch of monster hunters, an international group of monster hunters that went and did their thing. There were various, it was a skill-based system like Call of Cthulhu, and there were various monster types to go after, as well as, lots of opportunities for homebrew monsters. But it ran the gamut from werewolves, vampires, mummies, ghosts, a Loch Ness monster, undead of all sorts, and witches and cultists, the whole bit. And that was more of a grown-up game where the players would, be alerted to a situation and then go in and kind of like a 1940s, 50s to present day version of the Ghostbusters, but on an international scale that, would, bounce from continent to continent with full backing of the organization and get into all kinds of, adventures, let's say. And then I ran Beyond the Supernatural. Actually, I ran Call of Cthulhu before that. Call of Cthulhu, you guys are very, very familiar with that. It's, Lovecraftian horror in all its glory. And while it's a great game, it's a very niche game where if you're not really well versed in H.P. Lovecraft's work, or at least somewhat versed, it's probably not the game for you. And I struggled with that game because my players just wouldn't and couldn't be bothered to read the source material. And without that, love for the lore, you're going to have a hard time with it. At least my group did. And as for Beyond the Supernatural, I ran the first edition, not the new reincarnation. And mostly I ran what were called victim games, where you made up a normal person who would be in sort of a Stranger Things, Erie, Indiana. If you guys remember that very short run series that dealt with, for the most part, kids being the only ones knowing what was going on and trying to deal with it with their bikes, their walkie-talkies, and their squirt guns full of holy water. It was also bikes. Right, long before there were kids on bikes. But also the victim games allowed you to run just normal people, like the characters from any of the Halloween or Friday the 13th stories, where you had no real super abilities or powers. You just had skills and some hit points, and you tried to make the best of things. And invariably, they were called victim games because invariably they always led to total party kills or one lone survivor. And it only took 5 minutes to roll up a character, and boom, on to the next adventure. It was really a glorified one-shot sort of campaign idea where we ran multiple one-shots, but eventually settled on a Kids on Bikes campaign that lasted about a year and a half. In addition to running the actual horror games, I've used horror in my AD&D games, my Traveler games, my superhero games, just about every game I've ever run, including I did a little bit in Boot Hill because the first module actually has a ghost in it, which is kind of weird for the setting. Let me kill that. Sorry, guys. So I've run lots and lots of horror games. Sometimes they were the only games I was running. But to be honest, I prefer to throw horror into an otherwise normal campaign, whether it be D&D or Traveler, Villains and Vigilantes. That was a fun one I'll tell you about later. Because horror isn't always, the typical ghosts and ghoulies and vampires and undead. There are a lot of other ways you can throw horror in the situation, especially with a more modern Earth setting. It's easier for people to relate to the environment and to get in the mood. But that's something we need to talk about after we give Connell a chance to go through his resume.
Sure thing. All right, Connell, take it away. What settings or themes have you used with horror?
Well, I always like using my favorite monster if it's doing D&D or role playing in that sense, and which is humans. I think humans are great monsters for horror campaigns because everybody's kind of burnt out on vampires, werewolves, zombies. We've had movies, books, TV shows for the last 30 years plus about these topics. People are over it. At least most people I know are over it. So I'll do slashers. I'll do like the Michael Myers or the the Friday,
Voorhees.
yeah, that gentleman, and do stuff like that. And I'll do like with 5e, I ran Curse of Strahd, which, like I said, I'm just over the vampire nonsense. Get over it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying we've done this trend for how long now? Repeatedly for the last 30 years, if not longer.
Much longer.
Same with vampire, with werewolves and a few other things. And so I like using humans. And if I get a chance, or aliens, I found the stats for the xenomorph. And I'll use either aliens or humans. I think, like I said, I think humans are the best monsters you can use in this situation. I've ran 4 different, they're always one-shots. It's hard. In my opinion, it's hard. I don't think it's hard, but if the entire party gets away from a horror type campaign, a horror type game, the DM's doing it wrong. At least in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I think.
What do you mean by get away with?
How many horror movies or books does the entire group get out alive? Other than Scooby Doo.
That's kind of a toughie because it depends on what you consider the party. But
Yeah, that's exactly kind of where my thought processing on what is a proper horror, Scott. But yeah, I think so. When I do, like, say, a slasher, I will, if it's a slasher type evening, I will talk to one of the players before said game and say, guess what, Billy Bob, you get to be the big bad tonight. Unless you don't want to do it. Always give the players the option. And they won't have any P versus, won't be players against players scenario. There will be no combat in a sense. But we go run, I do a couple rounds or whatever, do our role playing. Then I have alarm go off, vibrate my phone, and I turn off the lights. I walk around the table, tap somebody on the shoulder, they leave the room. That person's now dead. You don't know when it's coming. You don't know where it's coming. And it brings that sense of horror into the campaign, that dread. Oh, God, am I next? Then after I get to certain numbers, the big bad comes out, and then we have, the final fight, per se. And so that's normally my MO. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just scrolling through chat while I'm listening.
Baron, all paladins are monsters, right, Shadow?
They can be.
Okay. Self-righteousness.
Paladins are the embodiment of heroism. I don't know. I don't get that.
If they become excited, they can definitely walk a darker path. But we'll get to that later. Okay, so now that we've kind of set the tone for, all right, so given that you guys have both run some horror-like games, set for me, how do you set the tone for what is normal for the players, and the characters that are in there? This is before everything starts going sideways. How do you set the tone for what is normal? And I'm going to start with Cigar on this one.
So, the Venturers come into a new town, and it's the festival of whatever. And the villagers bring them in to said town and put them up. Say, it's so great that you guys are here. We love having newcomers for today's festival. You have to be our honored guest. And they get put up with rooms, food, drink, lots of drink. And then the festival, they don't ever really say what the festival is about. But maybe it's sacrificing to get to the harvest, giving to the spirit of the apple orchard, or whatever, some variation of that. So now the party is thinking, having a great time. In most parties, not all parties, but there's always a few players in most parties like, is there alcohol? Yes, there is. I want to drink it. And he wanders off and probably is normally the first to go. Or you check into a hotel, normally inns. I like using inns or taverns, places that the players are not from. That's normally how I use it.
Okay, so you're establishing it at the beginning of the session. What is considered normal? The festival. I would consider that a little abnormal that they start directly into a festival, but it might work for different tables. Shadow. What kind of how do you set the pace for what is normal for your players? Is this like a session 0 thing, a pregame invitation thing, or is it something else?
Well, there's a lot of variables right off the bat. I know Connell's going to probably stick with fantasy, so I'm going to, for the night, just avoid fantasy settings unless I absolutely have to. Sure. Well, I really don't like one-shots when it comes to horror because, one, people don't care and don't invest themselves into the entire situation. It's a one-shot. They don't care if their characters survive. They're not going to take it seriously. They expect to die. So it's a completely unrealistic gaming forum. It just always goes poorly when I've done it because people just, they're not going to take it seriously. So normally I will not even tell people it's a horror game unless we are specifically playing like I said, with chill, you go into the game, what's up. Same thing with Call of Cthulhu. For all my other attempts at horror, I do not tell them it's horror. If I can't naturally make them afraid through game mechanics and storytelling, then I've failed and they'll never know. If I tell them it's horror, they're going to go into it expecting everything. Every single trope, every red herring, they're going to process it from all the horror movies they've ever watched, every slasher movie, every monster movie. They're not going to get it. It's their ability to suspend their disbelief and to get into character just goes right out the freaking window. So I will do everything normally until I've set little pieces, little clues and little bits of information until I can feel them getting into it. When their hit points are low, when they're running out of equipment, when they're cut off. There are 3 things that really get the ball rolling. That's silence, darkness, and solitude. If you can use those 3 things, please take notes. Because you're going to want to remember these 3 things. Because if you can remove their ability to hear, there's lots of ways to do that, whether it be magical, super science, supernatural, or just because they can't hear anything because there's nothing to hear. Maybe just their own breathing and their own footsteps. You start feeding them the beginnings of the horror. Darkness. If you cannot see, you are up that creek without even a rowboat, without a canoe. You're floundering in the water. You are seconds away from death. Then solitude. They say never split up the party. Split up the party. Subtly at first, there's 2 paths: expediency, Scooby-Doo, however you want to look at it. You guys go this way, we go this way. Okay, now they're separate. Now they're already in their mind. They've got that, oh crap, our strength has now been cut in half. And again, as the smaller parties also, whether it's through death or trapdoors or you don't know what happened. Suddenly, your two friends are not there. You went with, there was three of you. Now you don't know where they are, and start going from there. You get those three things in there, and you start using non-horror elements, non-tropey, obvious here they come at you, elements to get that adrenaline going. Now they're worried. If they're not worried, they're not going to be afraid. If they're not even a little bit concerned because they're a big bad party of 6 to 8 characters, none of them's worried about anything. Once you get to a certain point, especially in games that level up, once you get to a certain point, it becomes a complete cakewalk as long as you're together.
Okay. Yeah, I'm taking notes, and I'm also scrolling through chat here as quickly as I can. Oh, that's a good question. So when you split the party, do you physically separate the players as well?
That's a toughie. You can try, but most game areas don't have the opportunity for that. You just tell them, hey, you cannot communicate. If you even try, I will penalize you. You have to lay down the law in a horror game. If I see you nodding or even looking at anything but your character sheet and me, there will be a price to pay. If you want to, this is a situation where you cannot metagame, because that's one of the killers of horror, is metagaming. It would be better to run a horror game without even character sheets. How many times, do you see a horror movie with people fully equipped with everything they need to handle the big bad, the monster, the zombies, whatever? That is one of the key ingredients.
Depends on the movie. Aliens 2, Bruce and the Army of Darkness, Zombie something land, Zombie something.
I consider the Army of Darkness, I consider more of a slasher, not a real horror movie. There's too many jokes. There's too much tongue-in-cheek. And mind you, humor is a part of horror, which I'll get to in a moment. But if you want them to be scared, the people in the Aliens movie were scared, but it was more for different reasons, because it was something beyond the normal. It might as well have been supernatural. And trust me, they didn't have everything they wanted. If they had everything they wanted, they would have been in another ship glassing the planet.
Well, I understand that statement, but the only problem with that was that powers that be said, no, we want to study those aliens.
I get it. And that was just retarded, but that was part of the underlying horror is, what are we actually doing? Sure. If we were successful, what kind of horror would we bring down on everybody's head throughout the galaxy?
All right, so I've got some comments that are start here. This one comes from our Baron G Rock. His favorite game that he played was in WAD. Game Master passed out character sheets and said you can your stat yourself. The equipment you have is what you find in your pockets. After that, here they found out that they were in a zombie apocalypse. That's quite a great start to a game. This one I had thrown up earlier. This is from Scott. I think it's hard to create tension because it is a game, and the players know they can make new characters. Some in my games are used to it. Oh yeah. So I've been in some of this guy's games. We have lost characters like almost right out the gate in some cases. Go ahead, Shadow.
First to Baron, that's not the only game that recommends playing yourself as a character. And if you've never done it, I know a lot of people poo-poo it, saying you should never play yourself. But you know what? Villains and Vigilantes, that was their thing as a superhero game. It was a blast. World of Darkness, that's great if they recommend it. You should get the opportunity to do it at least once in your gaming career. Play yourself and see what happens. Can you bring up the other one?
Yeah, let me bring up Scott's again. This one we're going to touch on this in a little bit because this is the whole tension builder, and that's going to be the next thing here. So go ahead and comment on this.
This is why I recommend you don't do it in a one shot, like before I said, because players will not give a shit. They won't be scared, and they're just going to try to survive. And if they don't, no biggie, no harm, no foul, no loss. You want to get your characters scared. Have them run their most powerful favorite character, and then bring the hammer down. Then watch them get scared. With that attachment to a long beloved character, suddenly those bad things start happening. They will start having that adrenaline start pumping. They will have those chemical reactions to the situation because there is something to lose.
Like I said, I disagree. Horror games.
Okay, well, why do you disagree?
Horror should be only one shots. Realistically, one shots. Because one reason. If it's more than a one shot, that means you could build its brother tomorrow or its cousin. You could build something other that you know that could take the big bad. If it's a one shot, you only get one swing at this thing. One. Not multiple times. One. And everybody knows, not everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but when it's this time of the season and your DM says, well, I want to play something a little bit different. And it's not your normal unicorns and rainbow bullshit, but it's something different, then the gig's up. Especially this, you don't play horror campaigns. Most people, I don't should say, but in the game shops, you don't do horror shops. You don't do horror campaigns in the middle of Christmas. I mean, you could do one during Easter. I mean, instead of, he came back as a zombie, sure, I'll give you that one. But
that's one of the best times.
These games are seasonal. This style of game is seasonal. Make it a one-shot and make it a damn good one-shot.
Okay.
All it takes is one player to throw off the entire element of horror. You want them to be afraid and scared, not to say they played a one-shot horror game. You want them to get the highs and lows of actually being afraid. Otherwise, you're just pretending.
Then have them go home and watch a movie.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the next bit. Let's see here. So we've established what is normal. When and how do you start providing hints that something abnormal is happening? Be it like what exact methods do you use? Do you recommend using? Do you play some guffins in the scene for any particular reason? How do you create the first actual sense of unease in the player's character? Not necessarily the player, but they can also be in that unease as well, but definitely in the player's character. I'm looking to do this. I'm trying to learn this. So I'm going to start with Connell here. So we've established what is normal. What do you do? What is the first hints of the abnormal?
Con saves.
Okay. Interesting.
They're drugged.
Oh, okay. So this is going back to the festival scenario where the players
are
falling into town.
I'm sticking with this.
Sure. Okay, so con saves against poison, against alcohol or a toxin of some kind?
Some kind of sleeping agent. Something that, I can't move my feet. I can't move my hands. I can't move. Why, that, and it's really small. I mean, hey, roll me a con save. You've drank too much. Roll me a con save. Oh, I got a 50. Great. Okay. A little bit longer. Roll me the con save. That alcohol seems extremely strong. Or that food you just ate, something's messing with your stomach. You don't feel like you should. Okay, roll me a con save. And it's a slow builder. You can't just do it to them. It has to be a slow burn. Even if they fail it first time out, just ignore it. Let it be a slow burn. Then when it actually kicks in, then the bumps and the horror start kicking in. Or if you don't go get that route and you have somebody at the table that kind of knows what's going on anyways, like a partner in crime for, buddies to come into play, have him leave. have him, his player just disappears. Where did Tom go? Or if it's on an island village, sorry, the last boat just left. There's no getting off the island until tomorrow. Start the whole trapness. And that works in sci-fi too. So, it's small little things. It's not these big, broad strokes. It's small little details. Con saves, trapping them on the island. Somebody's gone missing is always in my opinion, is always a good place to start. Storm. A good storm goes in.
Yeah. Let's see here.
It's a nice way
clowns because they look. People hate clowns because they just look different enough to throw the brain off. So I would say having things. Let's see here. I would say have things go slightly askew. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. All right, Shadow. To you, you've established what is normal. Where do you begin dropping hints that the abnormal is occurring? That's something that is apparent to the abnormal.
For me, it's a matter of addition and subtraction. You take things away, whatever their safety line is, their safety net. You take that. You slowly start whittling away that as you're adding more and more potential things to worry about. Whatever the situation, those will make themselves apparent. If you're in a sci-fi situation, well, obviously, your air, suddenly that's a problem. You start running out of air, you start running out of power, you start adding the threats with whatever the big bad, let's call it. There's always something at the end of the story that must be overcome. Whatever that is going to determine the things you can add to. If it's a vampire, you start seeing wolves or bats or things like that. People start getting sick. People start, having the puncture things. There's that for for fantasy or vampires. If it's one of the things I like using, because I've mentioned this a couple of times and I did it. One of my favorite horror movies of all time is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because it takes away everything and replaces it with something completely alien and horrifying. When the people around you, the NPCs behind you, because I'm not going to, use DM fiat against the players and start making them do this and telling them that. I hate these horror mechanics where you tell them they're scared and they run. I hate that. The fear spell in itself just completely eliminates player agency, and it's a great way to get a complete disconnect for the player. Well, I'm not playing my character because I'm running a big tough fighter. I'm not going to run from this. Well, I'm running, I guess. Well, guess it ain't my character. They may not say that out loud, but that's what they're thinking. But I give them every reason to start worrying by taking away and adding new things that they're not expecting. I'm not going to, connect the dots for them, because sometimes those red herrings are just part of the whole sense of impending doom. When Ripley came, or was it Ripley? No, I forget the character's name, who came across Jonesy, her cat. That was part of it. A simple thing like that. Oh, you think it's, what you're looking for? No, it's the cat. Because those ups and those downs are part of what get the players, their biology, start working for and against them. Because there's a reason why people like to play horror games, because it does, in a way, make you feel good. There are some biological things that are going on that make people go on roller coasters and go into haunted houses and watch horror movies. Because after a certain point, once you've gotten that adrenaline rush, it also activates your endorphins and dopamine levels. They're going up and they're going down, and those rushes are all part of the process. You need to be able to manipulate those as a storyteller to get it to work. If all you're doing is, banging it out as quick as possible, you got a time limit, fuck that. There is nothing better than to really get your characters or your players in the frame of mind of this horror than a cliffhanger ending at the end of the night. See you next week. Now all they have is time to sit and stew. You absolutely refuse game communication during the interim, and you just let their imagination go into overdrive for the week, the month, whatever it is, until the next game. And when they get back, they're already going to be pumped. Their adrenaline levels are just going to be just on edge, and every little thing that comes after that, they're just waiting for that other shoe to drop. And depending on your pace and your ultimate goal, that's up to you when you let that other shoe drop.
So Crafty asked specifically, using the body snatchers at your own table. Did you do that?
Oh, absolutely. What I did though, it was a superhero game. And the bad guys were the aliens, just like the body snatchers, but they slowly started taking over people in the government, their fellow superheroes. They didn't know who they could trust. By the end, the last game, they found out because they failed. They absolutely failed a year-long campaign. They were in the president's office, and he was one of them.
I mean, really, are they? I've seen the movie multiple times. Really, for the human species, are they really the bad guys? I mean,
if you look at it from Toddle's perspective, the body snatchers are the best thing that could ever happen to humanity. I get that. But when you're talking about superpowered heroes that are trying to save the world, doing all these things, and slowly I call them I forget what I call it, simulants or something like that, simulacrums or whatever. That's what they were calling them. I forget. It's been 35 years since I ran that game. But they would have little adventures in between, but every once in a while I would throw more of the little clues that these people aren't who they used to be. And, they knew what they were facing at a certain point, that there was this alien menace, but they couldn't track down all the pods and pod people. And it just, and they couldn't use their X-ray vision to find out that that's not, Betsy anymore. That's not, Super Dude anymore. They're just acting a little bit different. A lot of pressures on them, etc. And they would never know who they could trust at the end. And then finally they found out they completely failed and the entire planet was just about taken over. And they were some of the last ones to be pod people. But it was a blast.
Let's see here.
Caffrey's got another question.
Yep, there you go. I'm reading ahead to my actual questions. So Crafty asks, how did the players find out? What was the reaction once that moment happened? And how would you have changed or enhanced that moment for the future games?
I would start all over with a different group of people to start to change it because they failed. I let them know that at a certain point, when we got to a certain point, we'd be playing a different game. And they started to realize as more and more people, their handlers, CIA guys, friends and family were starting to act different towards them. And they knew that these body snatchers were out there doing their thing. When they started finding out, they started getting, aggressive and not angry, but, angry at the menace, angry at the aliens, and doing everything they could to try to never be alone and always have somebody nearby, and all kinds of video surveillance and doing everything they could to make sure there were no pods nearby when they went to sleep. And the paranoia levels were just exquisite. And if I ever got to run it again, I would do it in a deep space, not deep space, but a sci-fi intergalactic invasion, where planet after planet would be absorbed to this menace and just expand upon it, making it bigger, the scope.
I've seen that movie.
Actually, there's a TV show like that.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, I think.
What's it called?
All right. I honestly can't remember, but
if you do,
Katie
let me know.
Sackhoff was in it. If you know who I'm talking about, she played
Yeah,
Starbuck.
I think I saw it, but I don't remember it being quite. I didn't make the connection, I should say.
I think it was like season 2 that they found out that it was actually an alien invasion. Anyway, so I'm going to move on to the next item. So the next item I have is, now that we've covered how to build the initial suspense, and when let's see here, when should I allow the easing of the tension? So basically explaining away all the problems, oh, that's not really what's happening, and just kind of throwing up a smoke screen. Like, how do you ease the tension that the players are initially feeling to lay the groundwork for the trap? Connell, I'm going to start with you again.
Well,
or do you ease the tension at all?
it depends. It really depends on if it's an alien one. No, I just crank it down. I just switch into a faster gear and just keep at them until they're.
So no moments of respite then.
Oh no! When you have a horde of xenomorphs after you, it's how can I get out and how fast can I get out? If it's that one, if I'm running that type of horror.
Okay.
If I'm doing back to the village with the festival, oh no, we know where he's at. He's resting. We're giving him an honorable place in the festival. Would any of you other guys be interested in taking different roles? Oh, what's that? We're building a wicker man. Would you be interested in helping us? Just make them have the players, and most players want to be good people. So yeah, well, do you mind going out to the forest and picking kingsweed? We use it as a reef or whatever. Just separate the party, but making them think that they're doing things for the village. And realistically, they're most likely getting subdued one after the other. But like I said, in most campaigns with most players, if somebody asks them to do something, if the priest of the town asks them to do something, 10 to 1, they're going to do it because it's a right thing to do. Collecting the sheep, collecting food, collecting whatever. Players are most likely going to do it. I'll send a couple guys with you to help you. Well, I'm glad for the help. Thank you, G. Thank you so much. And off in the forest they go. But it just really depends if it's the village version of it or if it's a sci-fi alien. You're all screwed. You just don't know it yet. Campaign.
Okay. Let's see here. So, actually, I'm going to do Scott's first. Let the players do it for you. Then let them find evidence that explains things. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That. Okay.
Agreed.
So this one is directed for you, Connell. Hey, Iron Man, how's it going? Connell, have you used the Wicker Man in your games? How did you ramp up the tension until the realization that the players are helping to kill another person? How did your players react? Have you been that or done that situation?
Yeah, I've done the Wicker Man a few times. That's basically there's
Isn't that what you were describing?
Yeah, that's more or less what I was describing. There's actually a festival they used to have up in, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's this festival they used to have up in Norway.
Burning Man?
What?
Burning Man?
No.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Burning Man. That's
it is. Here it is.
You say you've run the Wicker Man as a game setting,
right?
How did you ramp up the tension with it?
When they realize that other players are disappearing, or they leave the table. They're no longer at the table. Their car is still in the parking lot, but they're no longer at the table.
Okay, so you had them go elsewhere then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
okay.
If a small child, it's not so much the attention as it can't be. I think it should be. How should I put this? For a Wicker Man type game, it needs to be. Oh crap! they have Tommy up there. We helped them build this thing. It needs to be a flash bomb. It has to be all fucking sudden, and there can't be anything they can do about it.
Okay. And how did your players react once they realized that they were kind of in a Wicker Man situation where they helped build the pyre to kill someone?
Most of them loved it because a lot of people don't, except for that horrible Nicolas Cage movie, if it's made in the 60s and you're under the age of, 30, you don't watch old movies. You don't read old books.
Okay.
So
what do you mean by they loved it? That sounds rather.
I'm assuming you mean that they
awful.
love the one shot or whatever.
They love it as a one shot. Yeah.
Okay. I think what Crafty is saying here is how did let's see here. The realization that the
they have been horrified?
Characters, not players.
The characters were okay. Let me explain this better. When it was going on, yes, the players were horrified. They were absolutely disgusted as characters. Away from the table, when we're all wrapping everything up to go home or otherwise, because it is a one shot. Out of 8 players, 6 people told me that they liked it.
Okay.
Because it's different. It's not the average, let's go kill the vampire werewolf bullshit. It was different to them.
Give me a second. I'm just typing up a note here. All right. Back to, let's see here. Shadow, let's see. Did I give you an opportunity to answer the
No. Could you repeat the question? Can you repeat the question?
The concept is this: once you have established the sense of unease, the rising tension, when should you allow for an easing of the tension? As the method to start laying the trap that they are going to run headlong into, going wee. What do you do, or when do you do this, and how?
You got to read the room. You got to see that tension build. You got to pay attention to them. You can, if you know what you're looking for, in facial expressions, especially micro expressions, if you're, one of those guys, you pay very, very careful attention. If they start sweating, you've got them. And you want them to go up and down and right back up again and down and up again. So you have got to really pay attention to their reactions. Once you've gotten a look around the table and they're all on pins and needles, the edge of their seat, you can let them down a little only to go back up. You never want to give them too much respite unless, if you are running a one shot, you got to move that pace along quick. You've really got to, you only get about 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of that normal, okay, we're starting to, cruise into the story, and then you got to take them up and then down and up and down until, it really is a matter of timing for a one shot. When you're doing an actual campaign, or even, if you want to, say, this is going to be a mini campaign, and see how you like the system, you can use those breaks in between as, like I said before, those moments where you let them stew in their own juices for a couple of days or a week until the next game. But you're going to want to go and do that up and down thing as you see fit. As if you don't get everybody in the group, that's okay, because a lot of stories have that one guy who's just not buying into it, doesn't believe any of the illusion. He's disbelieving the whole thing, or thinks there's another reason, but everybody else is convinced it's this thing. That's okay. That builds up more tension, and it builds up more suspense and drama during the story, the game, whatever you want to call it. You want to keep them, like I said, on the edge of their seat with ups and downs. And red herrings work. Not too many, because then you can completely confuse them as to which way you want them to go to get to the bad guy. They may decide not to. They may decide, you know what? Screw this. Game over. We are out of here. Okay? We're not doing this. Okay? No. We know it's a vampire, but we're going 3 towns that away, and we're going to keep on going, because we're not buying a ticket for that particular railroad. Not now. We're 4th level. We don't want to be tangling with vampires and werewolves. We're going to go over here to Goblin Land and Orc Land because that's more our speed. No, what I mean is the first half hour of the game session. If it's a one shot, let's assume it's a standard 4-hour one shot. You've got 4 hours. Well, the first half hour, you can let them, get acclimated to the setting, etc. No big deal. Then after that first 30 minutes or so, you can start introducing the elements of what's really going on and start getting them to go up that first big, incline before they're going to get, racing back down into the first body count or the first real, glimpse of something askew.
Yeah, there's no 4 hours. There's no 4 hours when I run this. It's an all-day Saturday affair.
Cool.
It normally
that could be the equivalent of several regular game sessions. I'm in a game on Tuesdays. It's about 2.5 hours, and that's the only bad thing about it is it's so short.
If I do one shot, if it's less than 8 hours, I don't bother.
Okay, so getting back to topic here, Crafty does have a question for you, Shadow. As you've done this, what kind of questions or discussion happened between sessions? How did you keep the tension high between sessions? Did you ever find that your players cooled during the in-between times? Sorry, I'm adding that a little bit.
To be honest, no. I've been pretty lucky with my game group. And it's really about certain players. Certain players will call me. I had one player who would literally call me like 10 times a day. Okay. This was years ago, but he would call me 10 times a day with different questions, even though we were going to play the next day or something like that. But I'll answer questions that, like little things, but I'm not going to tell him anything that would require a die roll to get the full story kind of thing, depending on the game mechanics. But I try to, if we're doing a horror thing, I try to limit the questions I will answer. They have to pertain to something, like pre-game, things. If they want to ask me about something about their character before the game started rolling, or something that's already happened, but anything that pertains to the future, you got to stay away from that. If they want to know if they can do this or if they can prepare for that, no, you got to wait till the game. But if you want to know about what your character did when he was in high school or college, or, certain pieces of equipment that they may have, or things that they've already come across, I'll be able to describe in more detail. Or if they want to know certain things about passages in books that they're looking at or researching at the time, things like that. But if it has anything to do with what might be or the future or anything like that, sorry, no go.
Cool. Okay, so we've talked about easing the tension. Now, okay, you brought this up, and I actually have it in my notes for the show. What happens when your players are just not buying the explanations of events as mundane coincidences? You brought up the idea that the player's just not into the idea of horror, and I think that is a huge aspect of it. Like, your players have to buy in. I understand that concept. If you are a player and you are at the table, there should be a suspension of disbelief for your, because if you're trying to actually role play rather than rolling, just there to roll dice, if you're actually there to play the role and play the character, you have to maintain a certain level of disbelief. And I agree that, because this is something you said earlier, that fear effects break the fourth wall and thus break the suspension of disbelief. That is something I believe in as well. And I also don't typically use fear effects. I hate using the fear spell, even if it's like in a monster's AI or their methodology of attack. I hate using fear effects if I can avoid it. So this goes along with the easing of tension. What happens when your players are not buying your BS explanations of events as mundane coincidences?
That's
who would like to
okay.
go first on that one?
Let me take it because it's really okay.
Sure.
You're not there to force them what to think or feel. Let them say, I'm just telling you what you see, what you have found. I'm not going to tell you what to think or believe. I'll tell you what you may have read or what you may have heard or what you know, like I said, see, what's in front of you. It's up to the players because there are going to be people in stories that they're not buying it. Palladium's not Heroes, Beyond the Supernatural has a character called the Nega Psychic. Magic doesn't work on them. They don't see illusions. None of this stuff works on them. Okay, they're just the full on skeptic. You could show them a ghost. The ghost could be right in front of them. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. There are going to be people and characters in your games that aren't going to buy into it. Use that to your advantage. This guy's not afraid. He's not buying it. Maybe he's right. Maybe he's gravely wrong. Who knows? You guys figure it out. You guys don't want to believe it? Cool. When you go into the next room, you see this. You're not there to, steer them the wrong way or the right way unless that's paramount to getting on with the game. There will be times when you have to tell them, hey, we used to call it GM hint. Okay, here's a hint. Here's a clue by 4. Okay, but you don't always have to do that, and you definitely shouldn't be telling them what they think or feel. That's their business. That is all. That's what they're there for, is to feel and to believe and to experience as if they were this other being, this character. That's what they're there for, is to role play, to be that other person. Let them do it.
Okay. So your GM or so your Scott says, I try to subvert expectations. Yeah, I don't. So I don't fully understand how to do that, and that's kind of why I'm asking these questions. Let's see here. Oh, well, I mean, yeah, you get a good point there, Scott. If you want them to think and feel according to a script, write a script. Well, okay, I'll go write a book in that case. Now, Crafty has a question to me. Jay, do you find that your players would be better for your horror games than other games? Have you personally vetted players for horror games? So, so I have only run horror, I think, twice total in 24 plus years. Only twice. And okay, I say that, but I've also run zombie apocalypse games, and I don't consider those horror. I consider those action thrillers, not necessarily horror, because it's just an absolute onslaught of zombies and waves and waves of undead. And that's not really horrifying. It's more, oh shit, it doesn't matter how many of these we mow down, they're just going to keep coming. To me, I don't think that's a horror aspect. That's definitely an action aspect. I could be wrong, because I don't consume horror media except for maybe the occasional Zombocalypse game or movie.
It's like a painting, Jade. Horror can be one color in your painting. For the whole story, you can add a little bit of horror. There are lots of types of movies that have little bits of horror, little bits of adventure, little bits of romance. When you're done, the painting might include that color, might not. Just look at it like, or ingredients in a recipe. You want a little bit of horror with a little bit of romance, with a little bit of whatever. Make something unique.
That's nasty. They call that necrophiliac, and I will not stand for that. That's nasty.
So I think Crafty might have got here a little bit late, so he might have missed my my whole spiel at the beginning. I don't run horror games. I don't consume horror media, and I'm asking these questions because I legitimately do not understand how to run a horror game. I don't, I've seen bits and pieces of, I think it was Red Dragon or Silence of the Lambs. I can't remember which one it was. It was the Hannibal Lecter stories. I've seen psychological thrillers. I've seen the Zombocalypse movies. And I just, again, it doesn't, like up here, it just doesn't click for whatever reason. I might be too logical of a person. I might rely too heavily on things that make sense, and thus I am like I miss the mark, and I don't know why half the time. So that's why I'm asking all these questions, and that's why I'm running the show. Sure.
Can I ask you a real quick question? Did you watch any kind of horror movies with your family growing up as a kid?
So a bit of a pointed question. The answer to that is technically no. Unless you count Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters 1 and 2, which I think is more of a comedy than a horror, although I think my 4-year-old brain was absolutely terrified by Slimer. And then I think Corpse Bride Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas came out when I was a kid as well, back in the 90s. And for some reason, I had it in my mind that it was a terrifying claymation movie and I would never watch it. And as an adult, I've seen it, I don't know how many times. It's my wife's favorite film, one of her favorite films. So as a kid, no, I did not consume a lot of horror.
That has honestly, a good part to play.
Okay, because I have not seen any of the Alien films at all. I've seen
How about
Terminator 1, maybe, or I've seen parts of Terminator 1 and most of Terminator 2. So, I thought, as a kid, I thought RoboCop was a horror film, not an action film, because of all the grotesqueness, the body horror that was happening.
How about Jaws?
Never seen Jaws, ever.
See, so you're asking the wrong guy here, Shadow. I've seen.
Because I was getting to a point. Believe it or not, the science of appreciating horror is a learned thing. And it's not too late. You can still develop those muscles. I would seriously recommend getting the lady and a big bowl of popcorn and setting down for Jaws. Start with Jaws. Okay. You got to take baby steps. You got to take baby steps.
Not Jaws. Not Jaws.
See,
because I know them personally, because I know him and his wife personally. If I was going to set them down to I don't, no offense by this comment, but a beginner horror movie, I would do Gremlins.
That's not horror.
I've seen Gremlins. Okay, Gremlins I have seen Gremlins.
Considered a horror by genre. We live in I do not watch Children of Corn, Scott. I live in Illinois. You know better.
I would recommend Jaws because it's so completely mundane.
Okay.
I mean, I get where you're going. I really do get where you're going, but there's an appreciation there. I don't think they'll get with Jaws as much as they will get with Gremlins.
Okay. But here's the problem.
Doctor Who's
Gremlins has too many moments that they will just be laughing or giggling.
First one.
With Phoebe Cates, I know. I know what you're talking about.
Malachi, Alien is not a bad one. Really, Alien, actually, we're both wrong. Alien. I go with Alien.
I'm gonna backpedal here for a moment and get back on the topic. But is humor a way of easing tension in the game? Should there be moments of humor?
It's part of it. It's part of it. Okay. There comes a point when when you're watching a horror movie or when you're in a horrible experience and you realize right after the scare you're still alive, and the natural reaction is to laugh. Okay, well, we made it, and then boom, something happened. No. Okay, it's part of the biological. This is how the body works. There is part of the whole experience when you've gone through that thing, and then you are alive, and then you laugh. Yes, there's that too, Scott. But for what we're going with, that's a completely kind of different thing. We'll probably get to that in a minute. But there's a biological process that's going on with the whole horror genre, and right after that, it is perfectly natural for people to laugh or make a joke, and because of the relief and the rush of the other things that are going on in the body. After the adrenaline comes the endorphins and the dopamine after that. So it's perfectly natural. Let them go into that. Let that ease back out of their system, because if you try too hard to thrust the horror back again, you're going to screw with the whole cycle of horror.
Okay.
I agree. For the most part, I agree. I think humor. What?
Well, this is science. Yeah, it's
You
not my idea.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Humor, even if you're running a serious table, serious table, and it has nothing to do with horror. Let's say we're fighting a dragon, and at the end of it, it's like, oh, fuck, I'm still alive. And there's always, it might not be intentional for the player to be a smart ass. It is a subconscious reaction to a strong emotional effect, is more or less what Shadow was saying. And I completely agree. In horror, you get it. In violence, you get it. You hear, soldiers make joking after a combat situation. So in the movies.
Like Scott just said, yeah. The sardonic humor, the battlefield humor, there's another term for it. It's escaping me right now. But yes, that is how some people deal with it.
It's just a break.
Okay. All right. So now we're getting back into the rising tension, because we've had the break, we've had the moment of levity. Getting back into the tension riser. What if your players don't fall for the bait of the trap that the sense of relief lays out for them? Without railroading the players, how do you begin to rebuild suspense and hook their characters into the final, or into the trap, to get them running headlong down the hallway towards the final encounter without railroading, if possible? Who wants to take it first, Connell or
Shadow? I can.
I got this. If you want a minute to think.
Yeah, go for it.
You use timers, right?
Yes.
Jade?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I've got sand timers. Yeah.
You love them. Use them.
Oh yes. Okay.
Don't worry if they don't want to buy into it. That doesn't stop the ball from rolling. Their feelings are irrelevant. The thing is going to happen. Whatever underlying undercurrent is going on, that's still happening. If they don't want to be afraid, they don't have to be afraid. Okay? They can be afraid later when it's too late. Sometimes horror ends tragically and everybody dies. That's the horror part. How many movies end with everybody dead except the bad guy? Lots of them.
I don't know.
Lots of
them.
Okay. In the old days, there was only comedy and tragedy, okay? If you go back far enough. Well, this could be a tragedy. And the tragedy was they didn't, catch it. So don't worry if they're not buying into it. Trust me, they may just be putting up a front. They may be worried shitless that what you're doing is what you're doing. They just don't want you to see them sit and squirm. Okay? Just keep rolling. Just you've got your thing you're doing. The bad guys have got their plans, and they're going to keep doing them, or whatever the horror mechanism is. It's let's just assume it's a big bad guy, because that's the easiest way to get through this. That big bad guy is going to still do what he's doing. Okay, they don't believe it, they don't buy it. They leave the dungeon. They're going, we did our thing. They get out, and suddenly they start seeing the consequences. Those consequences are now the new tool to use to get them either back on your railroad, if that's the way you want to look at it, or back into being a participant in making the bad thing not be a bad thing anymore. Are they going to be part of the solution or part of the problem? Because there is no middle ground when you're talking a situation like a horror, game. You can't. You can run away, but like Scott says, all actions have consequences. Just because they don't want to be part of it, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Yes, Rush song.
Okay. Connell,
Let
you got anything on
let
this?
them pay the price if they must.
If you have a player not getting into, I kind of on the same thought that Shadow has. It doesn't. He is a player at the table. His opinion does matter, but his opinion does not derail my story. The conclusion of the end is going to happen no matter what. It's either are they going to have a chance to save the day, or are they all fucked? And so if you got one non-believer, it's always good to have a skeptic. No, it can't really be that bad. And when you put the reality of the situation dead in their face, especially at the climax of the story, they have no other reactions than say, "Oh shit, I didn't see that coming. Oh God, that thing is alive." Going back, let's call it Cthulhu. Oh shit, they do exist, or whatever. It's just let them not believe. Then when it comes to appropriate time, shove it so far up their fucking nose, they can't help to smell its feet. I mean, just blatantly right in their face. Because it's a horror. It's a horror campaign. It being ghosts, zombies, whatever, chupacabra, whatever. Make the non-believer the biggest believer at the table by putting things in front of him he cannot just argue away. But you can't. But at the same time, you can't do it all at once. It has to be a slow. It's like with the poison earlier when I talked. It has to be a slow burn. I'm sure Tommy is somewhere just drunk. You know how Tommy is. I'm sure Tommy's just somewhere in the village drinking it off. Then when they get to the Wicker Men and one of the players is like, isn't that Tommy up there? No. Oh, wait, what? What are they doing with that? Oh, God. There's got to be a natural reaction if you can make it happen. That's my response. I'm sure Shadow disagrees with me.
No. I just wanted to address Crafty's jump scare. You can, but you can only do it once.
Jump scares are weird when it comes to tabletop RPGs.
Here's the thing. Practice in front of the mirror until you've got it down. Look at yourself as you read whatever you've written to be the jump scare. Write it down, but you can use it once, and they will never see it coming. Whether it's deadpan, whether you visually, physically shake a little in their direction, whether you do some weird facial maneuver, wide open, something crazy, they won't be expecting it because you've never done it before. Try it once, but try it first in front of a mirror. It may be greeted with nothing but laughs, but you might be able to pull it off. And if you practice, you might really be able to pull it off.
I was running a game in Missouri, and this was one of the horror ones I did, and I was doing an alien one. And I talked to my boss that I was going to send her text. But no one knew what I was doing because I was doing one of those underneath the table text. Hey, hit the lights. And I push the button, and it sent. And all of a sudden, the light would go off, especially with the battle map. Because battle maps and jump scares don't really go hand in hand all that easily. Because people see what's coming down the line no matter what. But I had the person hit the light for a second. Everybody, at first everybody jumped and then turned the light off. The figurine was missing. And that person was out of the room. There has to be a little bit of theater. Shadow is absolutely right. There has to be a little bit of theater. But if you have a partner in crime, some of these horror campaigns can be really productive in that sense.
Okay. Let's see while you guys are reading that one. Let's see here. I'm prepping the next question. So, okay, so this gets back to the idea that the horror climax is kind of a trap that the players or the characters in the story are walking into. And this is assuming they bought into it or they're going that direction anyway because of consequences. What if the players, not necessarily the characters, but the players or the characters recognize the trap before it's actually ready to spring and thus circumvent what you've been building towards? Do you fake them out with like a M. Night Shyamalan twist and move the goalpost by suddenly shifting what the trap is and where the final encounter is going to be, or something else? Who wants to field this one?
I'll go and go.
Okay.
I'll go. If one of the players figures out that Tommy is going to be fed to the Willow Man, right? He's going to be, or with variation of that. Yeah, the Wicker Man. Yeah, it's some variation of that one. Then that player just disappears.
Sounds a bit railroady, but I can see why. Okay.
I mean, this has got...
Because at that point, you remove the player because they're breaking the fourth wall in metagaming.
Right. If they're, then there's it's a very, I shouldn't say thin road. It's a very tight rope to walk. But even if he's not metagaming, hypothetically, let's say, me, you, I was the DM, you, Bruce, Shadow, this is the one shot I decided to do, right? And you guys, as characters, figure out what's going on in characters. Because I won't punish a character for figuring it out. I will punish a character for just, I saw this movie. This is a 1960 Christopher Lee ... I'm a dude, kind of be cool. You're ruining for other people. Oh, this is going to happen. And then, dude, here's your $5 back. We'll see you next week. Whatever. Just go. But if they figure it out as characters, just because they know what is happening doesn't necessarily mean they can stop it. The trap was set. The trap went off the moment they came into that village.
Okay. Going back to the Wicker Man. Okay.
So now it's just a matter of how many ticks until the curtain goes up, guy gets set on fire, and the rest of the party's like, holy shit. It's a matter of time. Okay.
What about you, Shadow?
I agree a lot with a lot of what Connell just said. However, it is a game. If they figure out something, it's really up to you whether you want to penalize them for that or change it. Let's just assume you want to change it so that you can keep that momentum of horror going on. Until you get that final last. You've worn them out, and now they're ready to just either have their characters die or fight the big bad guy, and let the chips fall where they may. I really don't like the idea of punishing them. If they figure it out, don't forget, there's more of them in the game than there are of you. You're one guy, the DM, and it's not supposed to be adversarial, but there is, a game aspect, and games have winners and losers. And if they figure it out, reward them for it after the fact. Let them know you guys did a great job. You figured it out. But don't tell them that until it's over. But continue on with your initial plan because you've worked hard on the story or the backstory, what's going on behind the scenes. It may be beyond your ability to pull something new out of thin air to change it so that they don't know what's going on. Because by this time they should have already had casualties and losses and horrors beyond the norm, and take it as a learning experience. But because there are ways you could, like, I forget who just said it, I think it was Scott again, just magnify the thing at the end by 10 to make it. That's not going to make it more scary. When the kids defeated it at the end of the movie or the book, depending on, I only saw the original. I didn't see the new one. So when the kids, just got to it and just, beat it to death with rocks and sticks. It didn't take very long. Okay? But that final scene where they get to do that was still followed by after effects. Okay, yeah, you killed the big bad guy, but remember so and so and so and so, they're going to live the rest of their lives, in and out of mental hospitals. And at the age of 46, so and so is going to not be able to take it anymore, and they kill themselves, and there's nothing you can do about it. And 10 years after that, you tell the aftermath, because that's all you've got left. If they get it, they won. Let them have their victory, but make them earn it.
Okay. Let's see here. Scott says, let's see here. Partly,
Parody?
you aren't going to outthink everyone at the table. People of similar IQ tend to hang together. Yeah, I mean that's definitely true with the groups that I know he's in, because I know this guy personally. I've been part of his tables before. I will get to Crafty's question here in a moment. Let's see here. Okay, so if the players have figured out that there's a trap, and they now know what the workings are of the trap, do you purposely make encounters to force them down that path that are so insurmountable, but that they only have that path to travel? Now, I can say this because I know there are some films that this is the case, but those are films and they are written as a railroad. They're written as a storyline, not a collaborative storytelling. So, do you ever make any of your encounters so insurmountable that they just have no direction to go other than your final direction? Or should this be avoided?
Well, it's a trap, right?
Yeah, effectively, yes. The trap is the climax of the story.
Traps rarely have escape routes. If you're in a building, a dungeon, a spaceship, and everything is pushing them into a certain direction, the floor plans probably don't allow for an escape route because that's how it was built and designed. If some psycho makes a murder house and gets them into the basement, there's probably no way out. Okay? That is part of the horror, is that you've fallen down the trap door, you're in the basement's filled with rats. The only way out is back the way you came. If they can figure out a way to do that, good on them. But if you have created a situation where the only way forward is literally into the mouth of the trap, maybe that's what it takes. Maybe they will be victorious with the big bad at the end of the trap. Maybe they won't because they should have avoided that trap door but didn't. Maybe that's what's going to have to happen. They could literally stand on each other's shoulders and try to find a way back through that trap door. That's where the playing comes in. You have no idea what they're going to do at any given moment. All you can do is draw up the scenario, draw up the buildings, draw up the dungeons, and if they get stuck, they get stuck. Not every horror story ends, like Connell said, with everybody surviving at the end of the story. All four characters made it through. They're all alive. Well, wouldn't that story be a little bit more poignant if only 1, 2, or 3 of them made it out? Sometimes somebody's going to die.
Okay. Anything to add, Connell?
It really depends on how I set up the village. And to my opinion, in the few times I've done this, the best result that I have is if I put the village on the island. It's some fishing village, but it's on an island, and there's no boats. The last ferry to get to the mainland is gone. So even if they figure it out, there's nowhere to go. and there's more villagers than there are of them. Yeah, finding a third option is awesome, but sometimes the third option,
That's me.
the third options can
He's definitely
sometimes
talking
like,
about me
well,
there.
I can't outrun the bear, but I can outrun you. You. So like I said, the moment they get into onto the island itself, the trap is already set. It doesn't matter if they find it out. There's no way off the island. They just have to find a way to survive it. And then you have the clock, from 6:00 p.m. to 6:00 a.m. They have to survive for 12 hours. And you already know at least one of them's dead because he's about ready to get burnt alive.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can't outthink. That's right. You can't outthink everybody, but you can definitely you can bottleneck the fuck out of them.
Or you could take the murder hobo route.
It's not Marine Hobo. Hey, you'd be surprised. No one runs. Very few people roll dice in this campaign. I run.
Okay. All right. So, insurmountable odds can be used as a mechanic or a method to kind of bottleneck them down a path. Okay. Is there any way of making those insurmountable odds not feel like a railroad? And I'm just like spitballing this one.
Yes. With fair warning. With fair warning.
Okay.
If you tell
they
them
have fair warning, they make the choice.
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is in fact a railroad. But don't forget that even sandboxes are railroads. If the players decide to go into a dungeon, that dungeon is a railroad, unless they go right back out the way they came.
Okay.
Once they have agreed within the social contract to go into your dungeon that you have told them about, they have entered a miniature kiddie version of a railroad. The whole thing may be a sandbox with lots of little bitty railroads all over the place. But once they've gone in there, they've agreed to pay the price of admission to go into your little railroad and do what must be done, or whatever they decide to do. They can close their eyes on the railroad and not look at anything. Or they can take part, investigate, kill the monsters, be the murder hobos, get the treasure, save the princess, whatever, and then leave. And then they're back into the sandbox.
Okay. Scott says, even if the choice is tacit one, people won't feel railroaded if they have at least, I guess, the choice. Yeah, that's not a bad point.
They didn't have to get on the ferry to go to the island. They could have just kept going down on the road. There was no reason for them to go to the village.
Well, unless you lured them back.
I'm gonna back it up. You did open with them coming into the village, like that. That was the opening scene.
Yeah, like I said before, this is why the island works the best. But it's like, hey, there's a sign. This local village, this fishing village, is having a festival. Let's go check it out. No, let's go. Let's continue down the road. You have to a certain. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to get to one of Crafty's questions here. I started this one a little while back at 8:48 p.m. Have any of you had players metagame and ruin the tension? How did you get the players back on track and back in the mood? Who wants to field this one first?
Simply, no, I don't have those kind of players. They're there for the game. They may think that they've outsmarted me, but they know better than to tell me to my face that they know what's going on. They absorb the information, they react, but maybe after the game they may tell me, you know what, I thought you were going to do this or that, and you did this or you did that. But I've been very lucky to have, mind you, they're not just players at my table, but they've been friends for decades that we've gone through thick and thin. But if you do have guys like that, get through the night. Don't invite them back, or explain to them after the game. Look, you almost ruined it for X, 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 and so and so. All these people. If you think something like that's going on, keep it to yourself, because these people come to get into the spirit of the game, to immerse themselves in their characters. The last thing they want is someone dragging them back out of the immersion just so you can have a little bit of, fun in the sun and bask in your own, ego and intelligence. Good for you. You figured it out. Cool. But wouldn't it have been better to just use that information quietly and make the right decisions and help your friends out surviving whatever that was, as opposed to ruin the immersion and everybody else's fun? And let them off with a warning, or just say, you know what, maybe this game isn't for you. That's what I would do.
Okay. Connell.
I think I lucked out, especially with the paid games. I've lucked out where I haven't had anybody completely do that. I had one instance where I had to remove somebody physically from the table, but that wasn't because he was breaking the fourth wall. He was just being a dick. But I think if you get a group of people, especially at a game shop, it's willing to pay to go there and have fun, they're going to be so concentrated on the game and being not, I don't want to say selfish, but they're going to eat up. They want to eat it up. They want to be part of it. They want to take part of it. And if you got that going on, in my experience, you don't have, well, that guy did this and this guy did that. Dude, you don't get that. Most of them's like, yeah, they figure out in their head. They keep it to themselves. And like Scott says, rule number 1, don't be a dick. So yeah, it hasn't happened to me in a horror type campaign. On a regular fantasy campaign. It's happened to you. It's Jade. It's happened to me. People figure out what the MacGuffin is of this week's session, and they can ruin it for everybody. And then you, like I said, like Shadow said, dude, people are here to have fun. Don't need to be a dick about it, But I find that if it's a theme campaign with horror being the subject, because it is Halloween, most people are there to have fun, and they will go along with anything you throw at them, as long as you don't completely push them up against the wall the entire one shot.
Okay.
It's kind of like, have you guys ever been to one of those host a murder mystery game live?
Yeah, I've been to a few of those.
That's the kind of players you want, the people who are going to really get into it. Treat it like that, explain to them, look, we're here to do this. You may whisper it to somebody or write a note, hey, I think so-and-so's the murderer, but you don't want to ruin it for everybody else by going, oh, in this Victorian era, my cell phone just went off. You don't want to spoil it for everybody around you because they outnumber you.
Especially if you have to pay to be there. God, separating people from their money is hard enough. Separating people from their money and ruining their good time, that's how bad things start.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Scott.
Nice meeting you, Scott.
In the chat. Okay, so we are at the 1.5 hour mark. I think we're getting close to the end of my questions here, and I've got some pretty good notes out of this. So I guess now we're into the final encounter, the climactic point of the game, where all of the action takes place. So let's see here. What do I have written? So now that the players have arrived at the final encounter, how difficult should that encounter actually be? And in that, I mean, like, what is the probability of success or failure? And we'll get into what success looks like in a moment, but how hard or difficult should this encounter be? the final conflict. Who wants to start? Connell, you look like you're thinking pretty hard there. Go.
Honestly, the few times I've done this one, there was no encounter.
Okay. Why is that?
The deed was done. The guy was burning. It was a friend who came in to sit in for this campaign. The players are not fighting. They're not going to fight a fire, or they could try to put it out, but the village is going to stop them. Villagers are going to stop them. So there is no encounter. The player who is in the wicker giant was never a player. He was just there for that night.
Oh, okay.
So it was literally.
So he was going to play along anyway.
Yeah. And
you were going to say there, Shadow?
He was literally doing the Wicker Man, almost scene for scene.
Okay.
Tell me that's not a bad way to do a horror campaign, one shot. If you do it correctly, it could be really fun. Players are not going to get pissed because no one died. There didn't die.
I have
just not my just not my cup of tea, but fair enough.
I imagine there's someone out there in YouTube land who's going to crucify you for that one, but
yeah. But no, I mean, yeah, if the players decide to rush the villagers, I'll have them break out their dice, and I already have the NPCs stats worked out, and they can. So
they're going to kill dozens, if not scores, of people to save one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, potentially save more people in the future if they wipe out the entire village, if you think about it.
Right. Absolutely.
But,
anyway, that's putting too much thought into that one.
It's more of I think, in my opinion, when the campaign, we fight dragons, trolls, all these monsters to begin with throughout the campaign. Having one game out of the night that's more of a psychological thing than an outright fist fight, I think makes for a fun, fun horror campaign.
Okay. Let's see here. Before I get into the comments more, I am going to post some of these comments. I'm not necessarily going to read them. Let's see here. So, Shadow, how about you? What does your final encounter look like, and how difficult is it?
It's really kind of formulaic, depending on the genre, the characters. I would probably treat it like I would any other big bad guy at the end of a dungeon. What I do is I take the player's hit points and add them together, and maybe add some. That's how much hit points the monster's going to have. How much damage it can dish out is going to be something akin to 25 to 50% of their hit points. Say they've all got 100 hit points. Well, the monster might do 25 to 50 points of damage on an attack. Okay, something like that. If it's a traveler game, well, it's going to be a lot less damage, because all it takes is 3 or 4d6 and the player's dead. That you don't have a lot of hit points in traveler games. You may have 45 points, your character. So there's that. It's really that simple, unless it's some sort of cosmic horror, in which case the numbers are massive in both respects, damage done and damage it can withstand. If it's a more realistic kind of game, where the characters are just normal people, then it doesn't need to have, scores and scores of hit points and do that kind of damage. If it's a werewolf or a vampire, it's not a matter of damage, it's specific types of damage. Otherwise, everything is pointless. If the players, come in and it was a werewolf that was, running the show, and they finally meet up with the werewolf, one silver bullet, it's dead. You just got to hit with it. Okay? That they win. The end. Cool. You guys did a great job. Hope you had fun. What do you guys want to do next? After the pats on the backs, etc. If it's a vampire, did you get the stake in the heart? Okay, if not, did you trick it into the sunlight somehow? If not, then it gets away. It's going to depend on the exact nature of the critter or whatever you want to call it at the end, if that is the route you're going. It could just be some horrible, computer virus that got unleashed on the world. Now what? Suddenly the planet.
Y2K!
Right. If that's the horror genre you're going after, the bad guy wins, and now you just survive. How does the world go on after that? The movie Fight Club. At the end of the movie, the world gets set back to the Dark Ages, or whatever, however you want to look at it. There's no more, it's all messed up. How do you move on? Do you just go on with imagining how you would survive if that's the end? Okay. But if there is something to fight, then you guys probably all have your own formulas for fighting the big bad guy at the end.
Let's see here. So you've gotten to the. I'm just posting these up there as I see them come up. Let's see, just ghost, but if. Interesting. Okay. All right. So now that your players have gotten through the final challenge, the final encounter, the epic climax, whatever it might be, what does success look like? And in that, I mean, is it a complete unequivocal victory? Is it just a bitter fight to the end? Is there a touching sacrifice for the greater good? What should victory cost? Shadow, you want to lead this one?
It should have a high cost, possibly the highest cost. A voluntarily TPK'd party is something that should be on the table when the players go into that room, that final room. Someone should say, whatever it takes. And that has but one meaning. If we all die and so does it, we win. That's what being heroes are all about. Willing to pay the ultimate price. But the reward is something that most people don't realize. It's one of the reasons we go to horror movies and roller coasters and things like that. There's something special that happens when people survive a traumatic experience. The bond that is shared from that moment on is unlike many, many, many things. There are very few bonds that are tighter than that. You ask any two guys who serve together, they'll maybe be able to describe it, but that is the ultimate reward. The bonding that takes place after you have survived something like that, it's worth more than any riches out there.
Let's see here. Crafty costing the thing. The two survivors just sat down and waited to die. Neither one of them knowing if they were the thing, but both were sure that they wouldn't let the other escape. Okay.
It's a great movie.
What about you? What is? I haven't seen that film either. There's a lot of movies I haven't seen. So.
Me too. Me too.
All right, Connell. What does victory look like for a horror game to you?
The Wicker Man has completely burnt down. Tommy is no longer with us. The party is huddled together, not quite sure what they just saw. As the first ferry comes from the mainland to the island, and they get to walk away with their lives. Yeah. That is the excess. That is it. They just, it's surviving the situation.
Okay, so victory is survival, but being changed in the process.
Yeah.
Okay. So change on like a
Even if you
fundamental level.
do a modern, even if you do a regular D&D one, there's no counters out there that should not somehow scar the players emotionally and mentally anyways. You know, fighting that dragon, seeing your buddy die, or being burnt, or whatever. These things are going to scar us no matter what. It's just this time it's a psychological other than a physical.
Okay.
Then the island disappears into mist.
Let's see here. Almost everyone die. Most of the time the aliens are dead. Most. Oh. Okay. Okay, so I think this has been a rather good learning session for me. I actually have quite a few notes on here. The only thing I have to close out this this topic is once all that this is done, we get to the resolution where it's story time, and this is where the game master, storyteller, whatever title you assign to the person who's facilitating the game, gets to shine, because it is here that I believe the rolling of dice is done. There's no more rolling dice at the end. The runes have been cast. You've all been keeping good notes. Hopefully as a game master and maybe as a player. You can now put a bow on the end of the session as you see fit. If there are no loose ends, the sun rises again on a safer tomorrow. If not, then you narrate what the player's characters missed, and it may come back to the story thread at a later time in a different place where the player's characters once again find themselves in the thick of things, this time maybe better prepared. So I like to put an epilogue onto, is it epilogue, the final word basically, to
Prologue.
every
Prologue
is the beginning, epilogue is the end. That's right.
Yeah.
So I like putting an epilogue into my campaigns, especially anything that's long lasting or even sometimes one shots, of this is how everything is tied up. Here's the loose ends that you never got to or never dealt with. And you might see those again later on down the road. Did you get, because I'm going to use Mark Hockman's aliens comments here, because he's made quite a few posts about aliens. Did you get all of the eggs? Did you get all of the alien or the xenomorphs?
The pods.
You're right. This is the end after the climax, after everyone's getting ready to wrap up and go home. That's when you put out the final narration. This is how it actually ends. And if they actually did succeed in all of the loose ends and didn't leave any loose ends whatsoever, to me, I think that's a greater victory, that the sun rises on a safer tomorrow. If it doesn't rise on a safer tomorrow, well, what did they miss? So, with 10 minutes left, we have time to discuss what we're doing this week. Does anyone have any other comments they'd like to share on this topic? Anything I might have not
just on
thought
what
of?
you just said. I cannot count how many horror movies always end with the knowledge of the viewer knowing that it's not over. Whether or not the players know it or not, when every movie from Little Shop of Horrors to Alien, they always have that little clip at the end that lets you, the viewer, know someone else is going to have to deal with this problem later. And unless you want this completely put to rest, you might as well go with the trope of it not being over ever. Leaving that chance for a sequel will probably do you better than then not. There may be that one occasion with a new group or something like that where you're going to be like, you did it, good job, good on you, congrats. But deep down, you're going to do this again. Some other group of players down the road is going to bump into this. Maybe some of these guys will be there. Maybe none of them will be there. But deep in your heart, you want a sequel. So how you handle it is up to you, but, never waste a good opportunity.
Yeah, I could not run that campaign more than once for any group, even if I tried to make a generational.
No, that specific one. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, even if I make it a generational, your great grandfather, survived this. Some island rules the island is ruled by an ancient, neutral god, but still wants the sacrifices. And it's a catch. This is a particular one you could only do it once. But with horror campaigns, going back to werewolf, I think you need to switch it up. It just can't be the run of the mill, silver bullets. That's fine. Well, I don't have bullets in my campaign. Well, it has to be a silver something. Well, I can just take a silver coin and chuck it at its forehead, right? No, the silver has to be inherited.
The sacrifice.
Yeah.
The element of sacrifice. Okay.
Or the vampire. Yeah, you're trying to stab a vampire through the chest with a stake. Sorry, that's oak, not maple. Sorry, that's maple, not Yule wood, or whatever. Only a particular type of wood actually does the deal. And let your players find out the hard way. Because everybody has their own ideas on how to take a vampire. We've all seen the movies and read the books. And when you sit down and play these games, all that backdoor knowledge that you have from literature, comic books, and movies is going to be running to the forefront. But if your DM knows that this is going to happen, and if he switches up one little thing, oh fuck, oh double fuck, and it puts the players back on their toes. And when the horror campaign, I think the players need to be on their toes. So that's really my last thing to say on for the horror, how to run a proper horror campaign. I don't know if that helps or not.
No, I think that's fine. Okay, with just 7 minutes left, let's get into what we're doing for, the rest of the week. Tomorrow, you will see at least the three of us on camera for Table Breakers. We are going to be running through a one-shot for Index Card RPG. Now, for those in the audience, this is going to be a warp shell adventure, and it's going to be the last flight of the Red Sword. If anyone out there in chat wants to go look up the actual adventure itself, it is on DriveThruRPG. You can also go to Runehammer forums to find out more about what the campaign actually entails. That's what I've got going. Connell, what are you doing this week?
Well, not to repeat what you just said, I am playing. I will not be the DM tomorrow. I will be the player tomorrow. I have a character concept I'm looking forward, and I'm very much interested in this index card RPG because I think I love a good story. Friday, I might do something. I don't know. So keep your eyes and ears wiggling. Saturday, I got a game with Shadow. Bruce is running game, I believe. And Sunday, we're going to talk about a slasher movie, but not just a slasher movie. One of the top 3 slasher movies. No. We're not talking about Prom Night. We're not talking about, I can't think of another old one. We're talking about Halloween. Michael Myers, the one who, the slasher movie that started it all to a certain degree. We're going to be talking about that with Shadow and Jack, and Omenau, I believe, and Mark. I think if you haven't seen the original one, go check it out. It's not going to be what you expect. It is actually, in my opinion, a good classic Halloween movie. So, with that being said, that's what I got going on. What about you, Shadow?
Let's see. Tomorrow I'll probably put out another one of my Why We Play the Game videos. Probably put one of those out every day this week. We might not have a craft video on Thursday because of some family stuff. And of course, Friday, I'm going to try to hang out with Max if he's doing a chill stream after he does the members only on Legion of Myth. But it is a Friday, and Fridays have been getting harder and harder to do that with the little guy's school activities. We'll play it by ear until then. Then, of course, Bruce Lombardo of Dick's Division's Pathfinder game will start Saturday morning at about 10:30 Central Time, I believe it is, followed by the Cigar DM's movie review with my son and myself, and the usual gang of misfits, and followed by Sunday we do our Sunday show-off show, where we'll show off all the crafts and projects we worked on for the month of October, possibly -1. And we show those off and let you guys see the final renditions of all the little projects we worked on this month. And then roll into a new month starting Tuesday. Hopefully all of you guys will have a wonderful weekend. And, even though Halloween's on a Monday and that's a bad thing, that actually can be a good thing if you wanted to, by just making the whole weekend Halloween. Take advantage, starting Friday night, start doing Halloween stuff with the family, the friends, find a couple of parties to go to. Lord knows we've all earned it after the last couple of years of not being able to do all that stuff on a regular basis. So make the best of it. Don't look at it as, oh crap, it's Halloween's Monday, we can't do anything. Well, no, go do something. Do it twice. Do it Saturday, do it Sunday. And, if you're tough enough, start out Friday night the right way and just enjoy it, for the goofy holiday that it is. Candy and, awful costumes. Because you can guarantee you'll see the little guy and I several times in costume this weekend. So,
I think
enjoy
Bruce
the hell
said
out of it.
I think Bruce said something about giving us extra XP if we showed up in costume this coming Saturday. I could be wrong.
I was already planning on it.
I can't wait to see
Alrighty.
Jan's costume.
You are in for a treat then.
Alrighty. Well, I'm going to take the last few moments. So if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like button. If you really liked it, consider subscribing. And in the video after the show is ended, if you refresh the page, you will find a link to the Discord if you want to be part of the discussion and ask questions directly. For suggestions to topics to ask in the future, you can join the Discord and join the conversation and post those suggestions there. So this has been Gatekeepers, and we really appreciate you, the chat, for sticking out the 2 hours with us. And don't forget to subscribe. Have a great night, everyone.